ready, man?
Party people in the place to be. It's about that time for us to.
Yeah.
What's up, chiropractors? This is Dr. Silveri, your guide up the mountain to $1 million practice. If you're looking for the roadmap to grow your practice fast, then keep on listening. This is the Path to $1 Million podcast, where I chat with today's most successful practicing chiropractors. And remember, if you want to get there faster, visit getmemorenewpatients.com to find out more about Leverage Media, the most comprehensive digital marketing agency for chiropractors on the planet.
What's up, everybody? This is Dr. Nick with Leverage Media, and we are here with another episode of Path to $1 Million podcast. I'm here with my new friend, David Rutherford.
Hi, how are you?
This man, we're at the TRP event here in Dallas, and last night, man, you lit the stage on fire.
Thank you.
I was doing a podcast when you came out here, and I think you were like getting ready.
Yeah.
And you were like screaming, and I thought you were like screaming at someone on the phone. I'm like, there's something happening. Like, there's something wrong. And then I go out because
that's a common response to how I behave on a regular basis.
Because I thought you were one of the chiropractors because I had never seen you before. And then I go in there and I watch you speak, and I'm like, oh, now it makes more sense.
Yeah,
like
totally,
you're just getting ready to like go to war.
Absolutely,
you know?
yeah.
So,
the right frame of mind.
That's right. So give people a little bit of background on who you are and kind of how you ended up here with us chiropractors.
Sure. I'm a former Navy SEAL. I was also a contractor for the CIA. I also worked with Blackwater. So 15 years carrying a gun within the special operations world and intelligence world. I was a curriculum development training specialist. I was a security specialist. Deployed, over 7 times in war zones, and started after a very specific experience. My second trip to Afghanistan in 2005 was kind of moved to start my company called Froglogic Concepts, which is introducing people to a style of thinking that's reminiscent of the Navy SEAL teams and our 70-plus year success at the tip of the spear, so to speak.
Yep.
And it started with kids, and I first wrote a kids book, and then started speaking to kids all across. Did about 7,000 kids in North America in the first few years, and when the economy collapsed, went back to carrying a gun for the agency, and then got out in 2011. My ex-wife said,
"What was the name of the kids book?"
It was called Forging Self-Confidence for Kids, and then what we've done is that became an adult book, right?
Yep.
And then now I have kids books that I've revamped to deliver the Froglogic messages, which is to embrace fear, forge self-confidence, live a team life, and live with purpose.
Nice.
Under the guise of the 𝗵𝗵𝗁 badass cartoon character called Doc Frog.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
like, what parent wouldn't want their kid to live with those principles?
You'd be surprised. A lot
really?
are very nervous about. In the school systems, we're incredibly nervous about allowing me in to connect with their children. I think people have a big misconception about, because I'm a SEAL and my background, that somehow I'm gonna teach them how to blow stuff up, and and next thing after 5 seconds of listening to me, they're gonna want to become Navy SEAls and go to war and kill people, right? And it's absurd. And so, but that was a big reason for a shift to really focus on adults and in the corporate world and working.
They definitely want to blow shit up.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I interrupted you. 2008, then you said in 2011, I think you were about to say something about your ex-wife.
My ex-wife said, "Hey, no more," and my
no more SEAL.
No more deploying, no more CIA, no more stuff, and so we had a small child, 1-year-old, and so I said, okay. I stopped, and my next station I was going to was actually a place that ended up having a pretty catastrophic thing happen, and I jumped full feet back into Froglogic, a speaking business, which I do about 50 events a year all across country, and then it just kind of blew up on me ever since. So
that's awesome. Man.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I go to a lot of chiropractic conferences, but then I also go to a lot of marketing conferences. So I see a lot of great speakers. So in the chiropractic world, we tend to see a lot of the same people speaking. Like, we all kind of know each other. But when you go to marketing conferences, you're kind of seeing the best of the best speakers. And I will say that your energy, your presentation, top 3 at least.
Wow.
I mean, it was just like the way that you interacted with the crowd. The examples, like you used, personal stories of SEAL members.
Right. Medal of Honor recipients. Yeah.
And it was just the way that it was structured. It was just awesome, man. Like,
Thank you.
And
so
like you
much,
really
yeah.
brought it. And like, I mean, I don't think I've seen. I've been to a lot of these events, and I don't think I've seen like a guest speaker get that rousing of a
Wow,
standing ovation
that's
at the
cool.
end. So
yeah, I appreciate that.
So I thought it was great. So if you guys have the opportunity to consume some of his content or see him in person, I would strongly recommend it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So let's talk about the kind of the 4 pillars that you were talking about yesterday, because I just think that anybody that's trying to lead a team, because the topic this weekend is about team and leading a team, and you know, a SEAL team is one of the most elite teams, and you train them on how to be leaders. So let's talk a little bit about that, and you know, what are the components that make up a great team? Well,
you know, one of the biggest things that I always get whether I'm working with professional sports teams, and you know, in 2018 I was able to work pretty extensively as a motivational performance coach for the World Series champion Boston Red Sox. That year I also worked with the collegiate World Series champions, the Oregon State Beavers.
Nice.
You know, this year I worked with Green Bay Packers. I worked with Penn State men's lacrosse team who went to the semifinals. So, you know, it's one thing to be able to be in that high-level performance group and teach leadership, and it's a whole nother thing to teach leadership in a civilian format, right? You know, everybody always comes to me, whatever business industry it is, and they say, we want our team to be the Navy SEALs of this. And I'm like, okay, well, we're going to go down to the jungles of Central America for a month, and I'm going to beat the holy living snot out of you, right? I'm going to make your life miserable for 24 hours straight.
Wet, cold, and sandy, right?
Cold, wet, and sandy every day. And there's, you know, and everybody kind of says, well, I don't know how HR is going to feel about that, right? And that's the fact.
There is no HR in SEAL teams.
There is no HR, right? There is no. And so you have to recognize that there are some core ideas within the human condition that transcend all cultural backgrounds, all organizational cultures. They're just some very focused things. So what I did in the development of the Froglogic concepts, and like I said, I focus on teaching people to embrace fear, forge their self-confidence, live a team life, and then live with purpose.
Yep.
And once they have that down pat, then we can start working on great culture, team culture. And so, you know, one of the things yesterday's event was the team life and what it actually means to be a great teammate.
Yep.
We spend so much time on crafting, you know, the forum of how teamwork should work within our businesses, which is pretty cut and dry, right? I mean, no matter what industry, you know what your objective is.
Yeah.
You know how you're going to bring dollars in. The problem is getting all those people to function together and on with the same relative emotional motivation, and as well as a similar understanding of what your process is and needs to look like.
Yeah.
So what I really like to do is I leave the leadership development to guys like 𝗂𝗂𝗋𝗄, who was a task unit commander in the Battle of 𝗵𝗁𝗁. There's some other amazing leadership people out there. I like to teach people to lead from within first, right? To be introspective, to really look at themselves and say, am I a good teammate first? And am I doing the things to be a good teammate? And so for me, those 3 things is my commitment defined correctly? Am I training effectively for the mission? Am I communicating in an effective way that is how the team communicates, right?
Yep.
The specific team.
Yep.
And then am I being a leader of what I'm responsible for myself? You know, am I a leader to my peers? Am I a good follower of a leader? And am I poising myself to become an eventual leader? And so I really focus on those things, which I've extrapolated from, you know, all the experiences that I've had.
That's great. When you go in, like, you're obviously getting hired by probably Fortune 500, like big companies. You know, the Fortune 500.
But I also do a truckload of mom and pop stuff too.
Okay.
Like,
that's great.
I was, you know, I just in the last few weeks I was at 𝗪𝗏 in Oklahoma, one of the top custom oil and refinery retrofitting companies out there. I've worked with the largest family-owned pig producer, the Brenneman Pork out of Idaho. You know, so I do primarily about 70% of my speeches are within the financial world of some kind, but. Man, I don't care who it is, what it is. I don't need a crowd of 5,000 people. I'll come and work with you if you've got 15 people. I don't care.
Well, my point with that is most chiropractic offices are small businesses. They're really almost. I almost like think of them as like micro businesses, because when I think of small businesses, I think of like 1 to 5 million,
right?
Where there's like levels of organization and Most chiropractic offices are a single practicing chiropractor with some support staff around them. So it's almost like there's an executive, but they really have a job, and then they have some like executive assistants around them. You know what I mean? As opposed to they're running like a real organization. So with those, I think that there's a different set of challenges in those level of teams.
Dramatically.
So what are some of the tips that you could give somebody that maybe has, let's say, 5 employees, and they're trying to get the most out of the team, and they're trying to be the best teammate that they can be. So at that level of a team, what would be some of your recommendations?
Well, that's the place where most entrepreneurs all start, right? It's just a dream. We come up with an idea, we piecemeal together family and friends, and then someone we know, hey, you do this. Could you give me 15 hours a week or whatever? And so
there's always a patient that has some skill set, and you're like, you rope them. That's
totally.
how my office manager now was a patient, and she was looking to get just like a part-time job, and I was like, well, I need an assistant. Do you want to be my assistant? And then she grew into the office manager because
I love it. My children's former babysitter for years and years and years is now a graduate student getting her marketing graduate. So I ran into her the other day, and I'm saying, hey, you want an internship? She's like, you want an internship? And I was like, or she had said, yeah, I'm looking for an internship. And I'm like, come on board. We love interns. We love interns, man. So I think the real key that I found is, one, break bread with your team. Because for many people, it's every bit as emotional it is for us. Because people prefer to work for smaller companies. They don't like to get lost in the grind of bureaucracy. They like to know they're needed every day, right?
Yep.
Especially the younger generation. All the data's coming out saying and suggesting that millennials, they want to be a part of something on an emotional level, right? So small businesses, micro businesses, you call them, that's a way for them to get great work experience, to develop skill sets they never thought they would be used because they're wearing 5 different hats. And so break bread with them, get to know them. Don't hate them because you don't understand their language, you don't understand their process of how they do things. And the biggest one that I hear all the time is, man, they don't understand what hard work is. And I'm here to say, most 22 or 26-year-olds don't know what hard work is, right? It's a very rare person that understands that level. So, as you're breaking bread, present yourself as a potential mentor for them too, and a coach, and a person that's going to train them, that's going to give them new skill sets, but in return say, hey, I need your commitment, and to pull that extra additional. And you can't go, hey, I need you to do 80 hours, 90 hours this week, right? You got to incrementally develop those skill sets. But they're much more adaptable. They're much smarter than we were. They have access. They understand technology 10 times better, 100 times better than us. So they have all these assets. They just, we come from a background that was really built upon the backs of the greatest generation, and that old school mentality. Hey, if you don't like it, there's the door. Or, hey, there's the pool, jump in. And
have you ever watched Mad Men?
Oh, yeah.
My favorite line in the movie, Peggy's mad because he got the Clio Award for the Glow Coat commercial, right? And he won it, and he kind of took all the credit and got all the praise. And they were working late one night. He had forced her to stay late on her birthday, and they were working late, and she was just like, that was my idea. And he was like, you gave me a kernel of an idea, and I turned it into a commercial. And she was like, you changed one thing. And he was like, it was the thing that matters. She goes, but you never even said thank you. He goes, that's what the money is for. And that's like, that's my favorite line of Mad Men.
Yeah.
That's what the money is for. It's like, there's been so many times in my career I've wanted to yell that at somebody. And I've realized over time that you're right. Like that it can't just be about like, I'm paying you as a mercenary to go do this thing. It's like, I need you to be a part of the bigger mission and a part of the bigger the team. And if you're screaming that's what the money is for at your team members, they're probably not going to be on board for the bigger mission.
Listen, I come from probably the most alpha scenario that you can exist in, right? Special operations community, and particularly the SEAL teams. So every single day is a day that you're being peer evaluated in the most excruciating ways possible, up to and including physical repercussions for you not doing your job correctly, right? These are real things that happen, and because it's not a game. If we mess up, it's not like, oh, well, we'll get them next time. It's, no, someone's going to die, or you're going to get someone killed, right? And so that works in that environment. It's what keeps us sharp. It's what keeps everybody on their toes, keeps everybody, aggressive, which is a substantial. But in a civilian world where options are pretty abundant, right?
Never ending.
There's a statistic out there that by 32, 33 years old, millennials have had 6 different careers. Not 6 different jobs within the same industry, but 6 different careers. Now that speaks volume to their desire to want to search for something that has an altruism to it, something that's driven by emotion. So if you're dropping the hammer and saying, this is work, this is what it is, you got to separate, they don't understand that. Those days are gone. So the biggest thing I'm feeling is this recoding culturally for senior level executives, and then most especially for mid-level. You and I are caught in the crossfires because we were taught from these guys, but we're having to mentor these guys, and they don't jive, and that becomes trouble. So break bread, and then don't be afraid to over-meet. It's I call it debriefing, briefing, debriefing. Have your morning meetings every morning. Give everybody, hey, even if it's for 30 seconds, hey, everybody knows what to do. Let's go get them. At the end of the day, hey, let's have a quick 5-minute debrief before everybody leaves. How'd you do today? And keep track and records of those debriefs. So there's you can establish first and foremost a baseline of performance, right? So often I see with smaller companies, they don't know what their baseline of performance looks like at all, and they don't know what their actual limits are in terms of how hard they can drive and how long. And that's a big deal, because what most senior level managers are missing nowadays are burnout within their people. Ever since the crash of 08, 09, 07, 08, 09, everybody's doing multiple jobs. In our world, that's a daily occurrence. You're going to do. There's a couple groups out there within the intelligence world that are classified groups, and they'll go overseas by themselves in the middle, right in the backyard of the most, the people that hate them more than anything else, and they'll set up entire intel networks over the course of a 6-month period by themselves. And so I had one friend of mine, I said, well, like, how many roles and responsibilities? Like, my last trip to Africa, I was doing about 42 people's jobs.
Wow.
42 by himself for 6 straight months in a place where everybody wants to kill you. So we understand adaptability. What happens in these smaller companies is, a person in the interview process, we might need you to do some other things too, but we'll talk about that, and then the interviews, we're finding that everybody is becoming a world grand champion of interviewing, right? You sit them down and they're sitting there and they know how to discuss, they've read, something in Bloomberg Business, and they can quote some data on market trends or whatever, and you're like, damn, this person's on fire. Then they get in and their work ethic sucks. They actually don't know how to communicate with people. They don't know how to use technology, and you're like, oh my God, I just spent 3 months recruiting this person, and now what do I do? So there's ways to eradicate that.
Steven has a company, Franson, he has a company called Chiro Matchmakers that tests people specifically for this. And I've talked to him and Alan before about it. Like, people will say anything in an interview. Like, if you're using your your special brain to decide who's going to be a good employee or not for that position, like, you're going to lose more times than you're going to win. But if you use the data, if you use these tools that allow you to, you're never going to know. You can't judge somebody's work ethic through one of these tests.
No.
But you can figure out if this job takes an analytical person and this person told you they were analytical but they're really extroverted, it's not going to work out, and you're going to find out 3 to 6 months down the road. Then you're going to most small businesses or micro businesses are scared to fire people, so then you're going to hold on to them for 2 years until they finally make your whole thing toxic, and then they quit anyway. It's just like this. Every place has the same problems.
And that's the one thing I always say to people: hey, listen, don't be afraid to fire anybody. In our world, we have an 86% dropout rate in the program,
right?
And their job as instructors and buds is to get rid of people. It's not to keep people, it's to get rid of people. To discover people's weaknesses, expose them on a regular and repeated basis until they either crack or they show some level of grit or determination that is endemic of what a future frog could look like. And then we nurture that back into place, and then we break them, nurture, break them, nurture.
Right.
Well, I call it, in my team culture talk I give, and developing great culture, and this is it shocks people when I come and say this, it's called the positive application of pain. You have to learn how to apply pain to individuals and your collective and the mission orientation on a regular and reoccurring basis. If people are not feeling a positive pain, they're not growing. Right? Everybody wants to settle in, get comfortable, become complacent, become toxic. So my advice to people is, yes, have a process of, hey, this is the standard. These are the repercussions if this behavior continues. Give them 3 shots to rectify, but that's it. And don't extend those beyond, how it's going to directly affect. Because if they don't want to be there, they don't want to be there, and they can go find somewhere else. And there's literally millions. There's according to
7 million.
There 7 million people that are searching for jobs.
Or 7 million. I was going to say 7 million open jobs now.
There's 11 just from the data that came out on Friday. There's 11.5 million people looking for full-time jobs right now, actively. Right, there are 650,000 trade jobs out there right now. There, everybody needs an online marketer right now. Everybody needs a videographer. So there's a truckload to do. It's just how adaptable you can be with the culture of the organization.
And I think that not getting upset, like you said, don't hate them because they're they're just a person too. They're not trying to ruin your life. You've just not, you guys just don't maybe match up, they don't match up with that job, or you didn't train them the right, because I take 100% responsibility of any problems that happen in my business.
You have to.
And so, that's why I try not to get upset with any of my employees. I fired somebody a few months ago, and it's he caused me a lot of strain and stress, but it's my fault because I didn't take the time with him. I didn't hire him correctly. I didn't train him correctly. I didn't hold him accountable well enough. And at the end of it, you don't have to be mad. It's just here are the KPIs that you're responsible for. You either hit them or you don't. If you don't, this just isn't the right fit for you.
And that's
just
a big thing.
That's more of a business than it's not personal.
No, and people need to realize, well, it is personal. You're affecting me personally. It is a personal decision. This whole concept that we split our personal lives with our business life, especially your small business, it's immensely personal.
No, I mean that they're not trying to personally ruin your life.
No, but they have to realize, hey, this is my life. This is my livelihood. This is every day is a grind for me to feed my family, and now to help you feed yours. So, at least acknowledge that, be accountable to that, and have some integrity with that. But I'm a big proponent of not letting toxicity last. It's not worth it. And if they are, get rid of them. And that's why KPIs are such a critical aspect, right? So often I go into companies and I'll say, hey, let me look at how you recruit people. What are your, what do you do? And we hire a headhunter. Oh, what's their standard?
Yeah.
They're just trying to pump people through the door
they,
for the,
they,
they don't get,
they get paid if you hire someone.
Yeah, right. So, all right, what are the benchmarks of your probationary period? People are like, probationary period? I'm like, hell yeah. What's your probationary period? That they're on notice. Hey, there is no other exception other than this standard of performance. Yeah, I'll give you leeway if you mess up or fail because you didn't know I didn't train you effectively. I'm cognizant of that. But if you come in under these just standard things, not showing up to work on time, right? Not bringing a positive attitude to the work environment,
right?
Whatever it might be, man. Boom, you gotta send them packing.
I love the probationary period was one of the best things I ever did because I used to just like you'd hire somebody, and it's like you just kind of assumed, all right, well they're in it for life. And the probationary period, you're going to know if somebody's a good fit or not in 90 days.
Absolutely.
And it also like forces the meeting at the end of the 90 days to where it's like, all right, let's make this. You have to like literally make a decision to continue.
Yeah.
Instead of just like one day turns into the next day.
Yeah.
So the probationary period is I haven't talked about that with anybody on the podcast, but that is that's a real ninja trick to make sure that you are getting a point where you can like reassess, did I screw up?
Oh, for sure.
You can do everything right and still get a bad apple.
100%. I mean, we people are like, wow, you guys must never have any problems. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Right. We're a pack of alpha males slammed together in really high stress, high tense situations. Yeah. We're all, we've got a pretty substantial a lack of emotional intelligence. We don't roll with empathy. None of that. It's mostly apathy for each other and the presence of weakness or our perception of the presence. So we're
you can all kill each other.
And it's that's there. That's palpable.
Yeah.
So the reality is, hey man, if you don't clearly say, hey, this is not set in stone. This is a probationary period.
Yeah.
That gives people a notice that, all right, I need to perform. I need to step up because, man, I don't care who you are. Once you have that drive at whatever level it is, that's pushing you to perform at whatever level you're going to, and most people their performance thresholds are way lower than what they're actually capable of, right? Yeah. It's the built-in comfort zone behavioral patterns of our societies.
Yeah.
And, if you don't put that pain, hey, you're under review every day, on them, man, it gives them space to resort back to that, I'm good now.
Yeah.
I can just coast. So, yeah.
How old are you?
47.
So, we're like young Gen Xers.
Yeah.
So we have all like the good parts of like the baby boomers, but not as many of the bad parts. And then we like kind of grew up with technology, like when we got into like college and whatnot.
Right.
So we're like right in that. I'm 42, and so like we're right in that perfect sweet spot. So I think like our 42 to 48 range people are like the perfect people for this environment. I will say that millennials, I think they get a bad rap. Like my best employees, like the three of the four best employees I've ever had are millennials, and the fourth one is my office manager, and she's just like a second mother to me.
Right.
And she's just like the best. But the millennials, I've had terrible millennials that like meet all the things that people hate about millennials. But man, I've had some of the hardest working, smartest people as millennials. So I hate it when chiropractors are kind of like that.
Yeah.
They like just have it in their mind. It's like this self-limiting belief that all millennials are bad. And I'm like, man, if you think that, you're going to miss out on a lot of talent.
There's immense talent. It's a bigger talent pool than the baby boomers, actually. There's 70 to 74 million baby boomers.
Yeah.
There's 80 million millennials, right? They're going to be the most significant generation in modern history in every facet, in every industry. But it's been funny. There's been some great articles written recently about Gen Xers saying the future is dependent upon us, and what I'm extrapolating.
I guess we got to save the world again.
Right? So what I'm extrapolating from it is it's we're not going to change the world, right? We're not going to invent something that shifts the whole dynamic of all societies and whatever. But what we're doing is it's up to us to teach this next generation the power of hard work, and to not let the greatest generation, the efforts they put forth in the Depression and World War II and Korea, to build what built America into the superpower it is, not to let that fade, right? To teach those lessons that are still critically valuable, regardless of whatever time you're in, right? And that's on us.
I like the team stuff is amazing. Like, I think your content is awesome.
Thank
but
you.
we were talking right before this just about like content creation in general.
Oh God.
And I think, and so like, you know, I have a content marketing agency, and so I try to give a lot of good tips on like how to create more content, how to structure it, and it seems like you've got a pretty good model of how you've really built your brand off of content, right? Like just telling your story and utilizing the skills that you have. Tell us a little bit about some of the thought process that you go through in terms of coming up with ideas for content, and then how you organize it to, because you seem like you are kind of prolific with the amount of content that you create, mainly on YouTube and some of these programs you've been talking about.
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing for when I first started this back in 2006, right? Everything was brand new. I quickly realized video was king. You know, iMovie was coming out on Macs, and I was working with that and creating my own little videos. And at first, I always was so rigid on the, how I delivered and what I needed to do and what, all this stuff. And I quickly realized people don't care. If the content resonates with them, that's what matters most.
Exactly.
All the bells and whistles of, high production quality or value, which you can all do by yourself now, with a little bit of education on YouTube, right? You can YouTube anything, right?
Anything.
How to set your lighting in your video posts, what cameras to use, what microphones to get. But it really drills down to what you believe in. And I'm a guy that I'm on the road constantly, so I spend a lot of time in Ubers, in airports, and taxis, and hotel rooms, and so I do a truckload of research, and I'm researching every type of content creator that's out there, from the fashion industry to political analysts to every podcast guy out there. I'll take a listen to, and really what I found that works the most is if you come from a place where people, their BS meter isn't pegged right off the bat, right? You've got anywhere from 15 to 30 seconds before people are going to make that decision. If they found you, looked at you, and started your video, clicked on your podcast, whatever it is, you've got about 15, 30 seconds for them to go, I like the tone, I like their energy, I like, the title worked for me. That's what got me there. And there's something more. And then if you can get them in that first minute or so, you might get them for a 5-minute period. And if you go beyond 5 minutes, you've got now a follower, a fan. And that for me is where I come from. I gave up the rigidity a long time ago. I'm willing to try anything, any style, any level. When I first started doing, my biggest success out there has been when I was with Marcus Luttrell, Lone Survivor. We started a podcast together about 4 years ago in 16. And
what's the name of that?
It was called Team Never Quit Podcast. So I did about 125 episodes with them. And, it was, I had this very regimented format I needed to stay in, and we had these sections and these bits we would do. And after a while, we just, we said, that doesn't feel right, let's can that. And then we'd have our audience telling us we want more of this, and so we'd adapt to that. But there was, I got a lot of feedback from people saying to me, Rut, your energy, and I'm a high energy guy as it is, but your energy sounds contrived. I remember one of the first reviews we got on iTunes, and we got, within our first 6 months on air, we got nominated as one of iTunes' top podcasts of 2016, right?
That's not bad, right?
Yeah, that's a good way out of the gate. Now, it does help when you have the lone survivor and you're interviewing these insane guests, right? But
I think once they got there, they were staying for you, though, obviously.
But someone wrote this thing, they go, I love the concept, and I love Marcus, but Rut's voice sounds like there's nails in my brain. Please make them stop, And I took that on board, right? Most people are like, haters, don't listen to your haters. Well, sometimes the unfortunate truth of your hater can give you some great feedback.
Well, they might be saying the things that other people don't want to say.
100%. And especially within the SEAL teams and the SEAL moniker and all that, I always feel like people are, holy shit, he's a SEAL, he's gonna, I gotta watch what I say. But the reality is, I'm figuring this out just like everybody else is, but the real core of great content comes from if you really believe it and you're willing to be a little vulnerable yourself, right? That's to really expose that so people can see your passion. And however you want to do that, whether it's a podcast, radio, TV. I mean, a big shift for me. So on Instagram, I've got about 50, almost 57,000 followers, 56,000 followers, right? And a big shift happened for me when I decided, because before I was the old school kind of like blueprint, rubber stamp motivational quote every day. I call it the daily dose of Froglogic, right? And I just, get up, get going in the morning, just really kind of generic, right? And I'd, post picture of me with a gun and all this shit. And, I'm in college, I was an art major with a minor in poetry. So I'm a hippie who can kill you, right? And the reality is, man, that wasn't me. And what was interesting, I went through this real bad divorce, and I started writing more from a poetic place, in a place of feeling, in a place of introspection. And all of a sudden, man, I was tripling the amount of likes I was getting. People were forwarding my stuff on, and people were looking for that content. And now that's the primary focus, what I deliver. I deliver this poetic insight into what I believe is contextual for what maybe the nation's feeling at a particular time, or what I'm feeling, and I'm doing what I'm passionate about, and it's been the thing that's resonated, right? On my podcast that I started again, and called the Froglogic podcast, I toned it way down. I brought the energy down. Now I'll still go up if something cool happens and all that. But
you just can't help yourself.
Yeah, I can't. It's in me, right? It's always been there. You ask my mom, I was bouncing off the walls from the time I came out of the womb, right? But, I also realized that can overwhelm your guest. And it's critical to let your guests be at the forefront of what you're doing. I'll never forget, we interviewed Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs on TNQ podcast. And I remember into it, and Mike, said, well, Rut, let me tell you something. The first moment I realized that I wasn't the star, and that the guy cleaning out the drain pipe was the star, and his story was the star, that's when it blew up. And that was powerful advice for me. So I think so often content creation and the way the overall, influencers or whatever, it really is focused about an image. It's focused about this. It's focused about how it looks and, all this, instead of where you're really coming from. So be genuine and be passionate about your content, and be experimental, because there's a million ways. It's all been done before, but not uniquely by you.
Right. And I yesterday, when you were talking on the communication piece, and you were really talking about being a good listener, I feel like that's one of the most important things for this podcast, because like when we got started with this, like I just learned your name, and I learned a little bit. We were just talking more about content creation, but all I had was what you did last night, and I told you, I was like, I don't like to be too scripted with this stuff, because I like to just experience it the way a listener would be experiencing, so that I can ask questions the way that I know, because my listeners are chiropractors. It's a very specific niche that is listening to this podcast, so I need to be able to listen with that brain so that I can deliver as much value as possible.
100%.
But if I've got this, I've watched people I've done podcasts where it's like they literally came up with 12 questions before the interview, and we just go through the questions, and then I answer, and then they ask the next one, and then I answer, and they ask the next one. Instead of it being a conversation like this, this thing's taken different. I didn't think we would talk about content at the end of this, but I wanted to make sure, because I think that could bring value for the people that are listening. Because if you don't have a team, if you're an associate or you're a student, you may be more interested in the content side of it right now than you would be in the team building side of it.
We've never been in a greater evolution of the entertainment industry, and that's what we're all essentially is. When you're creating content, you're creating entertainment that hopefully provokes an emotional response, which causes action, right?
Yep.
So we've never been in a greater time for content creators in the history of our civilization, right? And what you're seeing is this juxtaposition of your traditional content, which is fast, furious, the 30 seconds to 2 minute delivery, right? Yep. The snippets, what you see on TV or in interviews. Well, you know, Joe Rogan, Tim Ferriss, you know, all these people out there have decimated the traditional idea. So what people are searching for when it's personal to them, they want to hear the truth of what the individual feels, how they learned it, where they learned it from. And the majority of our greatest connections come in really deep-rooted conversations where people are willing to be a little vulnerable, to be to go back and forth in a way that's not, oh, and by the way, go to teamfroglogic.com and buy my new book. You know, people can smell that a mile away. So the long-form conversation, the long-form interview, in whatever is where people are really starving for.
For example, like this we were talking a little bit more. You were mentioning that it used to be like it's got to be this way, it's got to be perfect, it's got to be produced. You showed me a video of you using your iPhone versus you using a $9,000 camera with a different angle, and the iPhone was better,
much better.
You know, this
and
setup
easier technologically to edit, to import everything.
This setup is 3 different cameras with 2 lights and 2 mics, and that's it. And so we started, and I didn't realize that they were going to. So I'm a vendor here, and they only have like 2 vendor breaks, so it's important that I'm available during the vendor breaks. And as soon as we started, they let everybody out for the vendor break, which is when I should be like talking to people.
Totally.
And number 2, everyone stood here and like just was super loud, so I won't even be able to use the audio from the video cameras. Luckily, I've got these mics.
Right.
Then about like 30 minutes in, the alarm, like the fire alarm, starts going off right behind you. But it's just like,
Doesn't matter.
You like get it done, because the people that are going to get value from this podcast are just like, man, I'm glad, Nick. Because like, what if you were like needed to catch a plane, and if I'd have been like, well, I got to do this vendor thing, we would have missed out on this.
Yep.
And then, you know, your schedule's busy. So it's like, when you have somebody in front of you, like, grab the content. When you have the idea, get it out. It doesn't have to, you don't have to like make it perfect. You don't have to go to some studio or get some professional editing done with multiple angles.
No.
It's like, just get the knowledge in your head out, or interview the person that you're wanting to talk to, because the person that's listening, they're only going to care about the content, not about what they don't like. No one cares about these 3 angles. I only do that just so that it looks professional, but it doesn't make it the content any better.
No,
it doesn't change what you said.
Well, what you're doing is, when you have a multi-angle source, as we've been so conditioned through cinema and through television, most camera angles only last 2 to 3 seconds, right? And then they're cutting and cutting and cutting, and then when you look at our devices, right? How long are you spent? So what you're doing is you're going for the behavioral conditioning that most people are viewing stuff. So, but I will say this in terms of, you know, there's a few things that I always get asked, you know, is you know, people saying, oh, I put up a video and I got 12 views, you know? Well, take it away and learn from it and be patient, right? Or I put this one thing up and it went big, man, and then you try and do the same thing over and over, and you're like, I don't know what happened. And I think the biggest thing is to recognize is, there are some standard operating procedures that, you know, that make things easier for people to consume, but it all stems back to paying attention to what you believe in, to be a true master of what you're delivering in a way that's genuine to you. You're not trying to be Joe Rogan. You're not trying to be someone else. Try to just be yourself. And then if you don't have the results you want, don't be afraid to change it, right? You know, don't be afraid. Because
just because you had that one idea that one time doesn't mean that anyone cares about it.
And then the other thing is also, I see the biggest really emotional deterrent for people is they want to compare themselves to somebody that's doing, you know, getting, you know, 100,000 views every video they post. A buddy of mine, a guy named Sean Ryan, he owns a company called Vigilance Elite. They're he's doing all kinds of things in the tactical world, and he started in November 2 years ago. So he's been at it about 2 years. He's closing in on 400,000 subscribers on YouTube. And his whole thing is, I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do, right? And people love it. And, some days it'll be great and some days it won't, but he doesn't care. And he's doing the content he wants to do, and he's paying tribute, and he's staying true to his fans, his followers, and he's just blowing up. And so that's kind of the secret.
People can, like you said, people can smell the BS. They can also smell the passion, and that you love something. And if you're creating content around something you don't love and you don't really truly believe in, you're probably wasting your time.
Why'd you get into creating content?
I love it. So Gary V's my business, idol.
I did an event with him last spring. There's a big group called On It. It's a supplement company.
Oh, yeah.
And so Aubrey and I are friends. I've done a bunch of events, and so we did an event that Gary was at, and I got a chance to watch him speak. And man, he's just a no-holds-bar guy. I love it.
Man. And
a big pivotal moment for me in social media was reading his book, Right,
Jab,
Right Hook.
That was the book that got me into it.
Yeah.
So I was, things were changing from offline to online marketing for the office, and so I still have my chiropractic office, and I was always a boots on the ground guy, get out there, hustle, network, spinal screenings, that kind of stuff. And as things were moving more digitally, I just don't have the skill set to sit down and edit a video, and I just don't have the patience for it,
Yeah.
And so I had all the ideas. I knew all what I should be doing. And then I read Jab, 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 Right Hook, and I'm like, oh man, it was like chiropractic school. I'd never been adjusted before I went to chiropractic school.
Right.
But the first trimester, the first week in school, I'm like, holy, this is what I've believed my whole life. You know what I mean? It was such a natural fit.
Yeah.
And that book was the same way.
Yeah.
I believe in content marketing. I think it's real marketing. I don't think running a $27 new patient special is your only marketing strategy is a good idea. And I think that if chiropractic got the message out of what it does, it would change the world. We just are bad about delivering the message.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So I read that book, and I'm like, this is what I need to do. I'm going to commit. This is all the marketing we're going to do forevermore on. It really changed my mindset. And I hired an integrator. I hired my marketing director, and all of a sudden we started creating content and putting stuff out there. And people were recognizing me at the store, and people were calling the office that were just coming out of thin air, because not only did we create the content, but we got good at spreading, getting it out there.
Yeah.
It's if you're getting 12 views on a video, put some money behind it.
Yeah.
It might be a good video. You just don't have enough organic traffic.
Totally.
And then when I started doing it, I'm like, this is what chiropractors need. They need somebody so when you hire my company, you get both the visionary, me, who thinks about it all the time and goes to all the best marketing seminars and knows all the greatest strategies.
Right.
And then you need my team to actually do it for you. And so the only things that we ask the chiropractors to do is actually create the content, because it needs to be in their voice. It needs to be about the stuff that they believe. And then we help them get it out.
Right.
And so our mission is really to help spread the message of chiropractic beyond just the four walls of my practice in Springfield, Illinois. So that's how I got into it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And now this is most of your job, right?
Most of it, we create content every day. So, we do.
Yeah. What's your process for creating?
So we do. So I have a lot of different types of content, because I take Gary, pretty much anything Gary says, I'm like, yeah, I'm all in.
It's gospel.
Yeah, right. So when he says, you got to give people content the way they want to consume it. So with this podcast, this is Chiropractic's only daily podcast. So I take the audio from all the other content that I create on the days. So I do 2 interviews per week. One interview is a practicing chiropractor, because I want somebody who's actually in the trenches.
Yep.
And then, so that's on Tuesdays. And then on Thursdays is an expert interview, like somebody like you or Steven. And then the rest of the stuff is either I do an Ask Dr. Nick show where I answer questions.
That's cool.
I'll do that on a Facebook Live. I do 3 to 5 minute videos where it's the 3 things you need to do to get your message out to your community, right?
Yeah, right.
So those are more for social. And then I'm starting to build out my YouTube channel more intentionally, to where I'm doing videos made for YouTube, to where it's a 10-minute training.
Right.
Because those don't really work that well on social. and the social don't really work that well on YouTube.
Right,
so like
right.
every platform is contextual, but the way that we've gotten, and we do a few other things as well, but the way that, and we do a blog each month, but the way that we've gotten to that is by doing something and then being like, oh, you know what else we could do? We could do this. Or we should stop doing that and we should do this instead.
Right.
But you have to like start doing it. I've talked to a few people this weekend where I'm like, because they'll ask me like, what's the best platform to be on? Or what's the best kind of content to make? And I'm like, I'll give you all the strategy. I'll answer all the questions you have. The first thing you have to do is actually make a piece of content.
Yeah, right.
Because the strategy only works if you have something to actually like put out there.
Well, people love using the word, right? Let's do content.
Yeah,
Content.
yeah.
They're like, and then you ask them, well, what is your content?
Yeah, right.
And they're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
I did a post. Or, well, what's your post? What,
Right.
you know, what were how'd you break your post down? What did it look like? What were you asking? What were you trying to accomplish? Was it, you know, and
that's what I'm bad about. I'm bad about I try to just put value out there all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't always think through the like strategy of like each individual thing. Like I'd rather just like get it out there and you'll kind of find the thing that resonates with you.
Right.
Versus like me sitting down for an hour and like strategizing, okay, what am I, the YouTube channel is the only thing that I'm really going to be doing more of that and the blog. The video content and the audio, I like to just like, do it.
Yeah.
Like I just, every day I'll do like a little 3 to 5 minute video on something that pops into my head. And then these interviews, I'm a big fan of Tim Ferriss's where it's just like, let's talk for as long as
you want
it's
to talk.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like until they tell me that it's done. If I have more questions, I'm going to keep going. I mean,
Right.
I try not to like, you know, waste like 2 hours of their time, but that's because some people, like I said, they love, I think this guy next to me yesterday said, he was like, I can't remember what he was talking, like I can't remember exactly how he said it, but it's like there's no limit on how long something can be. There's a limit on how boring something can be.
Oh, for sure.
You know, like if it's interesting,
Yeah.
a 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast that's
Riveted.
interesting,
Riveted.
you're all in.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I've listened to an 8-hour 𝗁𝗁𝗍 podcast before.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he did like an event where he did a bunch of Q&As,
Right.
and they just videotaped him the whole time, and they just put the audio up as a podcast.
Yeah.
And one Saturday I was just like cleaning the house or something, and I just put in my AirPods and I did it on 2x speed, and I listened to it for 4 hours, and it was 8 hours of content, and
Yeah.
it was just like gold, because it was where Gary's the best at, and where the reason I like doing these and I like doing the Ask Dr. Nick stuff is because I'm real good at improv. I'm good at like interacting.
on the fly, yeah.
And so I want to showcase that, and so he loves doing those Q&As, and that's where he's the best.
Oh, because he dissects a person problem within 5 seconds.
In
Yeah.
a moment.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And it's unbelievable. I did his 4Ds program. And
How'd you like it?
loved it.
Yeah,
Loved it. I mean, there was really like, if you went, you wouldn't get a lot of value out of it, just because you are probably a little bit too advanced for what because they're teaching. It's really more for like business owners that don't really have too much of a strategy, and then they're like, here's what you could do for this and that. And I did get some really good valuable tips, but I run a digital marketing agency, so most of the stuff I already knew.
Yeah.
For me, it was more of like just to kind of pay homage, you know, because it's just like he's given me so much, and to just meet him in person. And then he was my first podcast
That's cool.
Interview for this one.
That's really cool
this.
that you got him. Yeah. It's funny, when I first started this back in 2006, man, I consumed every single thing that the Titans put out, right? The Stephen Coveys, the Jim Rohns, the King, Tony Robbins, and you're like, how does this man fill arenas over and over and over? And there are people that go to Tony Robbins once a year, and they're paying, he moved to Florida, I think 2 years ago, came down to Boca Raton where I live, and we have this beautiful hotel there, Boca Hotel, and they have one space that's 5,000 people and then another that's 3. And he opened tickets to the Awaken the Giant Within program that he had, and he sold it out in an hour. And so then he opened up the other one, sold that out in an hour. And we kind of did loose math, and the guy made $18 million on that weekend. And so you have people coming in the low
That's
end.
on the front end.
Yeah, that's
on the front end.
Yeah.
There's a lot more on the back end.
Well, for sure, in
Yeah.
terms of, all the additional sales and everything, but and the coaching for sure is. But you go, how does that happen? Well, you got to look. Tony's been at it for 30 plus years, since the late 70s,
Yep.
right? When Jim was his mentor and started teaching him how to do it. And they were in hotel lobbies and hotel conference centers, and he's on flip charts telling how to do this. So
Yep.
everybody, it's a every space is highly populated, but everybody, you can be different, and that's the one thing that I think everybody that you'll see out there don't worry about what he's doing, do what you need to do.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people are like, there's somebody that's already doing that. They're already talking about that. So, like, what?
Talk about it different or better, or what you think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll never be exactly the same, but also, like, who cares? Like, what's the alternative? You're not going to get them to stop. Like, I just pay zero attention to. I used to. We do a SWOT analysis every year for the business, and for the agency, I used to put as a threat, like competition, like other agencies. And then I realized I'm just like, I really only want to have like 100 clients at like the peak of it, because what we do is kind of unscalable because we do so much custom work for clients. Right. And so I just want 100 people that like love what we do and like get it and understand like the long-term nature of content. And I'm like, there's 50,000 chiropractors in the United States. I only need 100 of them. How is it that some other agency that doesn't even do what we do a threat in some way?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? So like with this content, like that's why I put so much stuff out there for free, because it doesn't matter if somebody like listens to it and then like does their version of it. It's like it'll never be as good, because I'm always like evolving and changing and learning new things. And if all they're doing is just tailing behind me, who cares?
Who cares?
You know? Yeah. And with chiropractic, they're just basically, they're not really competing, but like people only have one chiropractor. They're going to choose you or somebody else.
Right.
So technically it's kind of a zero-sum game. Even if somebody in your town is out there making a ton of content and putting their stuff out there, they might focus on athletes. You might focus on moms and babies.
Yeah.
Like, just get your message out, and your tribe will be attracted to your message, right?
To you.
And the more
we make every decision you make in your life, whether regardless of how honest you actually want to be with yourself in the mirror, we make from an emotional decision.
Yeah.
I mean, we are governed by our limbic system, right? We wish that our prefrontal cortex was the dominant factor in our lives, but it's just not.
Yeah.
And most of us roll on our intuition, we roll on emotional reactivity, we roll on what's in front of our face in the moment, and if something flashes that we resonate to, that we grab it, we're going to stop and pay attention to it, even if it's for a couple seconds. But your brain catalogs it, and the next time you see it, you might stop for 3 minutes on it. But again, I go back to the sense of you gotta be who you are.
Yep. Don't
try and do what the guy who's got a huge following or whatever. Don't try and do what they do, and you see it day in and day out, man. It's literally like you can take 5 of the same guys and literally overlay their content on top of it, and it's the same stuff. So.
Chiropractors are notorious for because we're all friends on Facebook.
Yeah.
So like how like if like 5 of your friends share the same thing, it'll show the post one time, but it'll show that 5 of them shared it and like what their little comment on it was. There's so many of that, so much of that in my news feed.
Yeah.
Because it's just like this closed loop where we're all kind of like consuming, sharing, creating the same kind of conversation.
I mean, people, why does something go viral, right? Because it strikes a nerve, right? And that's what your job is to strike a nerve, but your job is not to go viral, right? Your job is to create
base hits.
Yeah,
base hits.
It's all day long,
Yep.
and is 100 million views with 500 videos any less than 100 million views with 10?
Right.
It's 100 million views.
And like as a local business, you're only going to really get patience from the people that live within, like a 30-minute radius around you.
That's it.
So it's you've got to stay. So 100 million views in China don't really help
anything.
you a whole lot. You know
what I mean? Everybody always is like, well, why don't you do more stuff for this or that or the other? And I go, well, because businesses hire me, right? And so I want I want them to see that I can be entertaining. I want them to see I can be professional. I want to see I have high energy. Because all they want is their people to be smiling if they spend the money to bring me in and to feel something, right? The fact of the matter is most people see a great speaker 14 to 17 days later. They can't even tell you their name. They can't tell you what the speech was called, and they can barely tell you one point that actually gravitated with them, and so, we live in an age. When I first started this, it was for kids, and I'd found a piece of data that by the time, I was 13 years old in 1980, whatever it was, and I had seen, maybe 500,000 images, right? And I watched a lot of TV. I was a movie buff. I watched, when I wasn't playing sports and I was watching, I love movies. And, now that number is 4 million. Wow. By the time a child is 13, they've seen 4 million images, right? And girls are spending an average of 8 to 12 hours a day connected, and boys are 6 to 9. Jeez. So when you think about that, it's just this rotating, content thing. And that's why it really is pivotal that you stay true to yourself. You get the technological basics down, and then just refine your process. Don't be afraid to try new things, right? People are like, I just got hit up, and they're like, Rut, why don't you give us a book review? Or Rut, why don't you talk about what, politics? Or, I get it all the time. People are like, Rut, you need to do sermons. You need to do Sunday sermons. And so, if I wasn't on the road as much as I would, and I had more time to edit I do most of my editing myself. My bigger videos, I'll hire this great group called Motive Cinemas out of Miami, but and they're helping me work on this TV documentary series I'm working on. But for me, to edit one podcast, to do the audio is, I'm spending, if I'm doing an hour and a half, which is where I usually try and fall in, or I typically fall in, that's probably a 3-hour process to get the audio where I want it. And then to do the video for YouTube, that's probably another 6 hours. So, I mean, that's 9 hours per podcast that I'm editing. Right. I have 4 children. Right. I'm running a business.
And you're traveling all the time.
I'm traveling all the time. There's a lot going on. So, there's always going to be sacrifices, but like you say, get it out there. Just try it.
Well, David, man, I really appreciate your time with this. I appreciate yesterday. I appreciate your service to the country. Thank you for keeping us safe. And Froglogic podcast, and what the website that
𝗃𝗄𝐺logic.com.
Is there any content that you could kind of point people to that you think would be good for building that team in a smaller business?
Absolutely. There's the one that probably my first one back is who am I and why am I here? And I really dig into being able to get set forth on the pathway to purpose, right? Through the pathway of pain, right? And when you can really drill down on who you believe you are and why you're here, you'll be able to find the right job. And then once you're in that right job, you'll be driven to be a part of that team more. I think so often, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I go back to Mike Rowe. He's one of my favorites out there. He talks about, hey, there's this big misconception is, follow what you're passionate about, right? But you also got to be passionate about, paying your rent, and eating, and having a vehicle, right? Be passionate about practicality too. Not everybody can be the next Jay-Z or a cinematographer, or, have a huge podcast or whatever.
I'm not giving up on the next Jay-Z for myself.
You got it.
I think these next couple of years are going to be my moment.
You're in there. Like I joke with my fiance. I was like, I swear to God, I could be the next Bob Dylan. She's like, you're worse. You can't. You'll never happen. And I was just laughing. But the idea is
The first album would be called Nails in My Brain.
Yeah. It'd be called Kill Myself, so I could cover a bunch of different things in my lyrics, right?
There you go.
But no, I think the reality is go to that. Who am I? Why am I here? I've got
Is that on podcasts or
podcast,
YouTube?
and then on YouTube, and that's on all the podcast platforms. And then on YouTube, I've got a great series called Embrace Fear, and there's 6 videos there that really help people begin to recognize that fear is the most significant thing that alters our ability to succeed and governs our failure rates. And if you can start wrapping your mind around why you're afraid, what causes your fear, what happens physiologically, emotionally, and start to gets an understanding of that, man, now you're on the pathway to achieving whatever you want to achieve.
That's awesome. And we'll make sure that those links are in there so it's easy for them to find it. But, man, like I said, I can't thank you enough. I really appreciate it, and it was awesome watching you. Anytime you guys get a chance to see him live, I would recommend it. But be sure to check out that content, and we'll see you on the next one.
Just because this episode is over doesn't mean you can't continue your path to $1 million practice. We've created Chiropractic's most full-service marketing agency at Leverage Media to help you reach $1 million a year fast and continue to grow. You can get a free strategy session with me absolutely free right now. To get started, go to getmemorenewpatients.com. Once again, go to getmemorenewpatients.com, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Path to $1 Million podcast.